The Businessman. In the early morning hours of a May night in 1955, a traveling businessman named Robert Honeycutt is driving along a darkened road just outside of Loveland, Ohio. As he approaches the Tanglewood Bridge, his headlights illuminate three strange figures gathered at the roadside, prompting him to slow his vehicle for a closer inspection. The beings are small, standing only between 3 and 4 feet tall, with a distinctly non-human appearance, characterized by textured, leathery skin. They appear to be conversing amongst themselves, seemingly unconcerned by the sudden intrusion of his car's bright lights. Honeycutt observes them for what he estimates to be approximately 3 minutes, attempting to process the logic-defying scene unfolding just yards away from him. The encounter escalates in strangeness when Honeycutt notices one of the figures is holding a metallic, wand-like object pointed toward the sky. Without any discernible warning, this device emits a brilliant shower of blue and white sparks crackling audibly in the otherwise quiet night air. Simultaneously, a powerful and peculiar odor permeates the area, which the witness later identifies as a strong mixture of fresh alfalfa and bitter almonds, a specific aromatic profile that paranormal researchers find significant. Fearing for his safety, Honeycutt accelerates away from the bridge, leaving the figures and their mysterious device behind in the darkness. He does not file an official police report at the time, convinced that authorities would simply dismiss his incredible story as a complete fabrication. Robert Honeycutt's uncorroborated story from 1955 establishes the foundational elements of the legend, which lies dormant for nearly 2 decades before it is shockingly validated by local law enforcement. Officer SHOCKEY. 17 years pass without any documented incidents until the creature reappears on March 3, 1972, shortly after 1 a.m. Loveland police officer Ray SHOCKEY is conducting a routine patrol along the icy Riverside Drive, which runs adjacent to the Little Miami River, when he observes something unusual in his path. A small, crouched creature suddenly scrambles across the road directly in front of his police cruiser, forcing him to brake to avoid a collision. Under the glare of his headlights, SHOCKEY gets a clear view of the being, which he later estimates to stand nearly 4 feet tall with a weight of approximately 60 pounds. Its most distinguishing features are a face that he describes as distinctly frog-like and skin that appears leathery and textured. The creature pauses its hurried escape at the side of the road and turns to face Officer SHOCKEY's vehicle, seemingly unfazed by the bright lights. For a few tense moments, the officer and the entity simply watch one another, the silence of the cold night broken only by the hum of the car's engine. Before SHOCKEY can even consider exiting his vehicle or radioing for backup, the creature swiftly climbs over the guardrail and disappears down a steep embankment that leads toward the river. His official police report is the first time the entity is recorded by a trained law enforcement observer. He returns to the station and reports the bizarre encounter to his fellow officers, documenting the specific physical details he witnessed. Officer SHOCKEY's detailed report introduces an element of official credibility to the strange local legend, prompting another officer to investigate the same area just 2 weeks later. Officer Mark Matthews. Exactly 2 weeks later, on the night of March 17, 1972, Officer Mark Matthews decides to investigate the site of his colleague's strange encounter. Motivated by Officer SHOCKEY's compelling report, Matthews drives to the same stretch of Riverside Drive, hoping to find any evidence that could corroborate the unusual sighting. As he arrives in the area, his headlights fall upon an animal-like form lying motionless in the middle of the road, which he initially assumes to be a dead animal or a piece of debris. He stops his patrol car and cautiously exits the vehicle to get a better look at the object, which appears to match the size and general shape of the creature SHOCKEY described. As Officer Matthews approaches, the creature suddenly pushes itself up from the pavement, revealing its bipedal stance and confirming it is very much alive. It takes a few awkward, shuffling steps toward the side of the road, once again mirroring the exact escape route reported by SHOCKEY. Reacting to what he perceives as a potential threat, Matthews unholsters his service revolver and fires a single shot at the creature as it climbs over the guardrail. The bullet misses its target, and the entity swiftly disappears into the darkness down the embankment leading to the Little Miami River. This incident marks the only time a firearm is officially reported to have been discharged at the Loveland creature. The second confirmed police sighting, now involving the discharge of a weapon, transforms the bizarre local story into a significant news event that captures regional and even national attention. The investigation. Immediately following the incident, Officer Matthews returns to the scene, accompanied by another officer to conduct a more thorough search of the area. Their primary objective is to locate the creature he fired upon, fully expecting to find a body or at least a trail of blood leading away from the road. The officers systematically comb the frozen ground and the dense brush along the embankment, using their flashlights to illuminate the dark path down to the river. Despite their diligent efforts, they discover no biological evidence whatsoever, which makes the encounter even more difficult to rationalize. Although the search for a body proves fruitless, the officers do discover a significant piece of physical evidence on the guardrail itself. They identify a series of distinct, deep abrasion marks scraped into the metal at the exact location where Matthews saw the creature climb over. The existence of these scrapes offers tangible proof that something of considerable weight and strength was present at the scene. With 2 credible sightings by law enforcement officers now on record, the story rapidly escalates from an internal police matter to a public spectacle. Local newspapers and television stations seize upon the reports, launching a media firestorm that grips the community of Loveland. The official police reports and subsequent media frenzy cement the 1972 sightings in the public consciousness, leading directly to decades of debate and amateur investigations. The Iguana. Many years after the media attention subsides, Officer Mark Matthews publicly recants his original dramatic account of the 1972 incident, introducing a new and far more mundane explanation. Matthews now claims that the creature was not a monstrous cryptid from local lore, but was very likely a large pet iguana that had escaped from its owner's home. He speculates that the reptile, which would have been struggling in the cold Ohio weather, had probably lost its tail at some point. The absence of a tail, according to this new version of events, would have altered the animal's balance and forced it into an awkward, seemingly upright posture as it scrambled away, causing his initial misidentification. This revised story is quickly adopted as the dominant skeptical explanation for the Loveland Frogman phenomenon, effectively reframing the event as a simple case of mistaken identity. Proponents of this theory point out that leathery skin is a fitting description for a large reptile, and the estimated size is consistent with that of a mature iguana. Therefore, the entire encounter is rationalized as an officer's understandable error under stressful and low-light conditions. This explanation, however, completely fails to address the specifics of Robert Honeycutt's 1955 sighting or Officer SHOCKEY's separate report of a distinctly frog-like face. For decades, the iguana hypothesis is presented by many as the official, logical conclusion to the case. The iguana theory remains the accepted explanation for nearly 30 years, casting significant doubt on the entire affair until recent interviews with the officers involved introduce a final, compelling twist to the story. Loveland's lizard. Following the official police reports in 1972, the intense media firestorm transforms the strange creature from a bizarre anomaly into a genuine local celebrity. Newspapers throughout the Cincinnati region quickly coin sensational nicknames like the Loveland Lizard and the Loveland Frog to drive headline engagement with the developing story. This public branding proves incredibly effective, making the creature an instant household name across southwestern Ohio. The story's official connection to law enforcement provides a veneer of credibility that fuels widespread public interest and speculation about its true nature and origins. As the initial news coverage inevitably fades, the narrative rapidly transcends journalism to become a permanent fixture of regional culture. It evolves into a popular boogeyman figure that parents use to caution their children against wandering near the river after dark, ensuring its transmission to a new generation. The legend solidifies its position as an enduring piece of Cincinnati area folklore, entirely distinct from more nationally recognized cryptids. The creature effectively becomes Ohio's very own monster, a story proudly claimed and retold by residents living along the Little Miami River, giving it a hyper-local identity separate from West Virginia's Mothman or the New Jersey Devil. This folkloric version of a terrifying monster, cemented by the media in 1972, persists for nearly 30 years, setting the stage for a shocking clarification from the officers themselves: river goblins. While Robert Honeycutt's 1955 encounter is often cited as the origin of the legend, historical researchers find evidence of similar stories circulating long before his report. The broader Ohio River Valley possesses a deep-rooted folkloric tradition containing tales of strange, water-dwelling humanoids that predate any modern documented sightings. Early settlers and indigenous populations shared stories about entities described as river goblins, small and often elusive beings who were said to inhabit the secluded coves and muddy banks of the region's many waterways. These older narratives consistently depict creatures that are semi-aquatic, bipedal, and wary of human contact, establishing a clear thematic precursor to the Loveland Frogman. Paranormal investigators draw striking parallels between these regional Ohio legends and the Japanese folkloric creature known as the kappa. The kappa is traditionally described as a river-dwelling, child-sized reptilian humanoid, which aligns remarkably well with the physical descriptions provided in both the 1955 and 1972 Loveland reports. This cross-cultural similarity leads some to speculate that these sightings are not isolated events, but are instead part of a global phenomenon of amphibious humanoid encounters, a concept known as the aquatic cryptid archetype. Therefore, the Loveland Frogman case might not represent the emergence of a new monster, but rather the modern rediscovery of a creature that has been a part of the local ecosystem's lore for centuries. This historical context of river goblins casts significant doubt on simplistic explanations, setting the stage for a modern documentary crew to finally get the full story from the officers themselves. The sparkling wand. Among all the reported details of the Loveland encounters, the object witnessed by Robert Honeycutt in 1955 remains the most perplexing and significant. He reports that one of the three leathery-skinned figures held a metallic wand-like device, which it aimed toward the sky before it discharged a shower of brilliant blue and white sparks. This specific detail is critically important because it is never reported again in any subsequent sighting, including the famous police encounters of 1972. The presence of a manufactured tool fundamentally changes the nature of the encounter, shifting it from a potential cryptid sighting to one suggesting intelligent beings in possession of technology. This singular, unrepeated element introduces a deep contradiction into the mythology of the Loveland Frogman. While the 1972 police sightings describe what could be interpreted as a biological organism or animal, the 1955 report suggests something far more complex and possibly extraterrestrial. The wand raises profound questions about the creature's purpose, forcing investigators to ask whether it was a tool, a signaling device, or some form of defensive weapon. This element makes the 1955 report an outlier that is often dismissed by cryptozoologists, but embraced by ufologists. The stark contrast between this report of technology and the later descriptions of a simple animal-like creature creates a deep inconsistency at the heart of the legend. The conflicting nature of these reports leaves the public with two completely different versions of the creature, a problem that a documentary filmmaker finally attempts to resolve decades later by interviewing the original officers. Animal or alien? The conflicting witness testimonies from 1955 and 1972 leave paranormal researchers and the public with two fundamentally incompatible theories regarding the creature's identity. The first and more popular explanation frames the Loveland Frogman as a cryptid, which is an undiscovered biological species native to the Ohio River Valley. This argument relies heavily on the 1972 police reports, where both Officer SHOCKEY and Officer MATHEWS describe what behaves like an animal that is startled by their presence. Its reported physical characteristics, such as leathery skin and a frog-like face, combined with its proximity to the Little Miami River, strongly suggest it could be a previously uncatalogued amphibious creature perfectly adapted to its environment. Conversely, the extraterrestrial hypothesis posits that the creatures were not native animals, but were instead intelligent visitors from another world. This theory is built almost exclusively on the initial 1955 report from businessman Robert Honeycutt, which contains details that cannot be explained by biology alone. The presence of three figures appearing to converse, the powerful chemical odor, and most importantly, the metallic wand that emits sparks, all point toward advanced intelligence and technology. This interpretation aligns the Loveland case more closely with classic UFO incidents than with traditional monster sightings. Therefore, the beings were not frightened animals, but were perhaps extraterrestrial explorers or scientists engaged in an unknown task by the river. This core debate between an undiscovered animal and an intelligent visitor defines the Loveland legend for the public, creating a mystery that persists until a documentary crew finally secures a new interview with Officer Mark Matthews. The 2016 sighting. After more than 4 decades of silence, the Loveland legend is dramatically resurrected on the evening of August 3, 2016. A local teenager named Sam Jacobs is playing the popular augmented reality game POKÉMON Go with his girlfriend near the shores of Lake Isabella, just a few miles from the original 1972 sighting locations. While searching for virtual creatures on his phone, he spots a very real one emerge from the shadows near the water's edge. He observes what he describes as an enormous frog, which then startles him by rising up and standing on its 2 hind legs for a moment before disappearing back into the darkness. The entire event takes place in a matter of seconds, but is distinct enough to compel him to document it. Reacting quickly, Jacobs manages to use his smartphone to capture several photographs and a short, blurry video of the creature as it moves away from him. He promptly sends the images to a Cincinnati television news station, which immediately recognizes the connection to the city's most famous piece of folklore. The photos and video spread rapidly across social media platforms, reigniting public fascination with the Loveland Frogman for an entirely new generation. Although the images are indistinct, they clearly show a dark, bulky shape with what appear to be glowing eyes reflecting the phone's flash. This incident represents the first time the creature has been documented with modern digital media. The new photographic evidence goes viral almost instantly, prompting local news outlets to track down the original 1972 officers to get their final definitive statements on the legend they helped create, POKÉMON Go. The specific context surrounding the 2016 sighting is critical to understanding the event, as it is inextricably linked to the global gaming phenomenon of POKÉMON Go. The popular mobile application uses a phone's GPS to guide players to real-world points of interest, which is precisely what brought Sam Jacobs and his girlfriend to that secluded spot by Lake Isabella. They were not taking a random stroll but were actively following the game's prompts, meaning their presence at that exact time and place was a direct result of a technological directive. This situation creates a perfect storm for a modern cryptid encounter, with a digital app leading its users into an isolated environment late at night. This strange intersection of a 20th century monster legend with a 21st century gaming craze provides a unique and compelling update to the entire narrative. Unlike the previous encounters, which were products of late-night drives or police patrols, the catalyst for the 2016 sighting is a piece of software algorithmically directing human behavior. This modern framework both complicates and revitalizes the Loveland Frogman's story, introducing it to a younger, digitally native audience who might otherwise dismiss it as simple folklore. The fact that the evidence is a blurry smartphone photo is itself perfectly emblematic of modern paranormal documentation. The sighting effectively updates the legend's methodology, replacing sworn police affidavits with viral social media posts and digital video files. The viral nature of the Pokémon Go sighting and its digital evidence creates renewed media pressure, prompting journalists to seek out the original 1972 officers for a final, definitive statement on the legend they helped create. The viral footage. Immediately after the encounter, Sam Jacobs sends his photographic evidence to WCPO-TV, a prominent Cincinnati news station, which recognizes the story's connection to the region's most famous urban legend. The station quickly conducts an on-camera interview with Jacobs, lending an air of journalistic credibility to his extraordinary claim and broadcasting it to the entire metropolitan area. As a result, the images and the accompanying news segment explode online, spreading rapidly through social media and paranormal forums. The Loveland Frogman legend is therefore revitalized almost overnight, propelled by the speed and reach of modern digital platforms in a way that was impossible during the 1970s. Despite the excitement, the evidence itself is highly inconclusive and serves more to fuel speculation than to provide concrete answers. The photographs are dark and grainy, showing a nondescript shape crouched near the water, while the short video clip is shaky and fails to offer a clear view of the creature. Ironically, despite being captured with 21st century technology, the evidence proves just as debatable as the verbal eyewitness testimony from decades prior. This ambiguity, however, only makes the story more compelling for an online audience, sparking intense debate about what Jacobs actually captured on his phone. The Loveland Frogman is officially back in the news, dominating local conversations for the first time in over 40 years. The widespread media attention generated by the viral footage creates a unique opportunity for journalists to finally get a definitive statement from the men at the center of the original 1972 incidents, the hoax. Following the initial viral broadcast, the WCPO TV reporter who first interviewed Sam Jacobs decides to conduct a more thorough follow-up investigation into the sighting. Fueled by a healthy dose of journalistic skepticism and the highly ambiguous nature of the footage, the reporter arranges a second interview with the teenager. During this more rigorous line of questioning, he presses Jacobs for greater detail about the sequence of events and the specific location of the encounter. Under this increased scrutiny, Jacobs's story quickly begins to unravel, revealing inconsistencies that were not apparent during the initial, excitement-fueled report. Confronted with these discrepancies, Sam Jacobs ultimately confesses that the entire event was a premeditated hoax that he and a friend had orchestrated. He reveals that his friend was wearing a homemade frog costume and they staged the blurry photos and shaky video near Lake Isabella, specifically to capitalize on the region's well-known urban legend. The news station immediately reports the confession, officially and publicly debunking the 2016 Loveland Frogman sighting just days after it captured the internet's attention. The incident serves as a classic cautionary tale about the potential for digital manipulation in the age of viral media. The creature that had reignited a local mystery is now confirmed to be nothing more than a teenager in a costume. The definitive debunking of the 2016 footage removes the only modern evidence from the record, focusing all remaining scrutiny back on to the original officers and their decades-old testimonies. The recanting. In a modern interview conducted for a local documentary, former officer Mark Matthews makes a stunning public reversal concerning his most famous case. He explicitly retracts the iguana explanation that had served as the official skeptical conclusion for decades. Matthews clarifies that he only introduced the iguana theory because he had grown weary of the persistent ridicule he and his family endured from the public, and even from within the police department. The social pressure became so significant that he provided a simple, rational explanation purely to stop the constant questions and mockery. Therefore, the very story that debunked the legend was, by his own admission, a fabrication created to escape unwanted attention. In this new testimony, Matthews powerfully reaffirms the fundamental details of his original 1972 police report. He states that the creature he encountered on Riverside Drive was undeniably a 4-foot-tall bipedal entity with leathery skin, and it was certainly not an escaped pet iguana. He maintains that its strange appearance and sudden movement prompted him, as a trained officer, to perceive it as a potential threat, justifying his decision to discharge his firearm. His final testimony effectively erases 30 years of skepticism he himself created. He concludes that he stands by what he saw and shot at that cold March night, validating his partner's initial, equally bizarre report. Matthews's stunning reversal completely dismantles the long-standing skeptical argument, thereby lending new and profound credibility to the unaltered testimony of the first officer on the scene, Ray SHOCKEY, Loveland's mascot. Despite the decades of conflicting reports and admitted hoaxes, the community of Loveland, Ohio, fully embraces its legendary creature as a unique cultural asset. The figure of the frogman therefore transitions from a frightening boogeyman into a beloved and celebrated local icon. This cultural adoption is perhaps best exemplified by a local theatre company which successfully produces a popular stage musical titled Hot Damn, It's the Loveland Frog. This theatrical production demonstrates how the town transforms a source of regional fear into a source of public entertainment and civic pride. Local breweries, retail shops, and independent artists frequently utilize the creature's likeness in their logos and merchandise, turning folklore into a tangible economic driver for the community. The Loveland Frogman ultimately becomes a permanent and integral part of the town's modern identity, solidifying its place in regional history. For many residents, the question of whether the creature is biologically real has become far less important than its role as a unifying piece of local heritage. The town now actively leverages the legend as a unique branding tool, attracting tourists and folklore enthusiasts who want to visit the site of the famous sightings along the Little Miami River. This commercial embrace creates a feedback loop where the legend's popularity reinforces its economic value, ensuring its continued survival, a common life cycle for many modern American urban legends. The monster, whatever its true origin, now functions as Loveland's unofficial and most famous mascot. The journey from a terrifying roadside anomaly to a celebrated town mascot demonstrates how a local legend can evolve beyond its origins to become a permanent and cherished cultural landmark. Global frogmen. The Loveland case does not exist in a vacuum, as remarkably similar reports of amphibious humanoids emerge from other locations across North America around the same time period. For instance, in August 1972, the very same year as the famous police sightings, 2 teenagers in British Columbia, Canada, report a silver-skinned reptilian creature climbing out of Thetis Lake. More than a decade earlier, in 1959, 3 men near Mansfield, Ohio, document an encounter with the Charles Mill Lake Monster, a massive green-eyed being they characterize as unmistakably frog-like. The existence of these other corroborated accounts suggests that the Loveland phenomenon may not be an isolated local legend, but part of a much wider series of encounters. This archetype of a water-dwelling humanoid extends globally, finding its most famous parallel in the traditional folklore of Japan. For centuries, Japanese legends have described the kappa, a child-sized reptilian being that inhabits rivers and lakes, sharing numerous physical traits with the entity reported in Ohio. The consistent appearance of this specific creature type in disparate locations like Ohio, British Columbia, and Japan leads investigators to consider it a legitimate monster archetype. This prompts theories ranging from a shared psychological projection to a globally distributed but undiscovered amphibious species. Therefore, the Loveland case is not merely an isolated local story, but is instead a single, well-documented data point in a surprisingly common and enduring global phenomenon. The skeptics. Skeptics consistently offer a rational explanation for the entire phenomenon, arguing that every sighting is likely a case of simple misidentification under stressful circumstances. They contend that on a dark, rural road, the human brain is highly prone to misinterpreting ordinary sights as something threatening or extraordinary. For example, a very large bullfrog seen from a strange angle, a North American river otter standing on its hind legs to survey its surroundings, or even a person with an unusual physical gait could easily be misconstrued as a monstrous being. The power of suggestion, especially when a person is alone and familiar with local law, plays a crucial role in this theory, causing witnesses to project a monster onto an otherwise mundane stimulus. The highly publicized 2016 incident, in which teenager Sam Jacobs admitted his viral video was a deliberate fabrication, serves as the cornerstone of the modern skeptical argument. This confirmed hoax provides a powerful precedent for fabrication, fueling considerable doubt about the authenticity of the older, unverified reports from 1955 and 1972. Ultimately, the most significant point for skeptics is the complete absence of verifiable physical evidence across 7 decades of alleged activity. Despite multiple official police investigations, investigators have never recovered a body, a bone, a blood sample, or any other tangible trace that could prove the creature's existence. A core tenet of cryptozoology is that an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, a claim skeptics flatly reject. This complete lack of physical proof, juxtaposed with the unwavering testimony of law enforcement officers, leaves the Loveland Frogman legend in a permanent state of unresolved contradiction. The believers. The primary counter-argument against simple misidentification rests squarely on the unimpeachable credibility of the central witnesses. Proponents of the legend point to the fact that the 1972 reports originated from 2 separate trained law enforcement officers who were on duty at the time of their encounters. Officer Ray SHOCKEY and Officer Mark MATHEWS both provided detailed, consistent descriptions of the creature's height, skin texture, and bipedal movement, despite their sightings occurring 2 weeks apart. This consistency between 2 independent observers, both trained to document incidents accurately, makes a simple case of mistaken identity far less plausible than it would be with civilian witnesses. Furthermore, the testimony of businessman Robert Honeycutt in 1955 provides a crucial anchor for the entire narrative, as it predates the police sightings by 17 years. Honeycutt, a traveling professional with no apparent motive to fabricate such a story, reported details that align with the later police accounts, while adding the baffling element of technology. The stories from all key witnesses have remained remarkably steady for more than half a century, surviving decades of public scrutiny and ridicule. In paranormal research, the long-term consistency of witness testimony, especially from multiple credible sources, is often weighed as heavily as physical proof. The unwavering, decades-long testimony from these credible eyewitnesses provides a powerful counter-narrative to the lack of physical proof, ensuring the Loveland Frogman remains one of America's most compelling and fiercely debated urban legends. The legacy. Over the course of nearly 70 years, the identity of the Loveland Frogman continuously evolves through a series of distinct and often contradictory public narratives. The legend begins in 1955 with Robert Honeycutt's report of a technologically advanced being suggesting an extraterrestrial origin rooted in the science fiction fears of the era. This narrative is then completely supplanted in 1972 by the police officer's testimony, which reframes the creature as a biological, animal-like entity encountered on a dark road. Decades later, Officer Matthews' temporary recantation introduces the iguana theory, transforming the monster into a case of simple misidentification before the 2016 viral video and its swift debunking demonstrate the legend's adaptation to the modern age of digital media. This constant evolution from alien to animal to hoax and back again demonstrates that the creature has become a true and malleable piece of American folklore. Its story serves as a cultural canvas onto which each generation projects its own anxieties and technological contexts, from the Cold War's fear of the unknown to the Internet age's skepticism of digital evidence. Its persistence is a testament to the power of a good story, especially one initially validated by sworn law enforcement officers. Ultimately, the legend's endurance proves that the most compelling question is not whether the Loveland Frogman was ever truly real. Instead, the enduring mystery is why this strange story from a quiet Ohio town continues to capture the public imagination so powerfully, refusing to disappear back into the murky waters of the Little Miami River. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.